I think it was successful. It's a little strange when it's not students, because the students interacted with the materials very differently than you guys do as adults, and you also have a lot more background knowledge than they did. But I still think you seemed like you were having fun with the activity. You got into the little competition part, which was one of their favorite parts of the lesson. So I think you understand physical properties. You were able to use them independently without me, so that was really the goal of the lesson. I think we got there. The students played a lot more with the objects, and they also weren't familiar with what all of them were, so there was a little bit more discovery involved, which was fun. The students also had a harder time applying the physical properties because they have less. I taught this to 7th graders, special ed 7th graders, and they had a little bit more difficulty with categorizing and also with applying those categories. So it gave them practice in more than one area, whereas for you guys it was a little bit more intuitive as far as the knowledge was just a little more intuitive for you. Everything went a little quicker. I would probably have fewer materials for English language learners because they may not have as much vocabulary as far as those objects. I probably would have picked more classroom objects that they had more exposure to. So fewer objects, more vocabulary. I might have written the list of objects up on the board so they could refer to that. And I also probably would have put more definition towards the scientific vocabulary as far as malleability or viscosity, the words that would be newer for them. I would probably want to provide more support for that, maybe even pictures if possible of how those things are different. No, this was a special education lesson, so I mean, I suppose depending on if the students had more speech and language issues, my students were, a lot of them, learning disability and emotionally disturbed. So if it was speech and language, I might have provided more of the vocabulary support as well. But I think for special ed, it was very tactile. There were a lot of different activities. We didn't stay on anything for a long time, but we practiced the same thing several times. So I feel like that tends to be how I structure special ed lessons. I think I probably would have kept most of that the same. I would think more about the question that Sarah asked me about the water, because I was not able to come up with the answer to her about 5 categories, 5 answers for the physical properties for the water. So I should be able to answer any question that a student asks me during a lesson, so I would probably take the water out until I figure out what the answer is when they can't do the tests that would determine the other physical properties. Yeah. I probably would not have for this lesson. When I did this unit with my class, I did do a PowerPoint on physical properties and chemical properties once we started going into how they corresponded with physical changes and chemical changes. But for the introductory lesson, which is what this was, I try to have that be pretty hands-on. And so the technology that was currently available to me, if I had maybe, I know there's a MimioPad where you can have the students record things and they come up on the screen. If I had something like that, I would use that in the classroom, because then they're still very involved in what's going on in the lesson. Sometimes technology, I find, removes them from the lesson, so I'd want them to still be involved in it. Take new materials from around the classroom. Most of the stuff that's in those boxes is from my science cabinet. So. Yeah, because I use the balls for velocity experiments with the 8th graders, and the dominoes are used for setting up whatever. So all of those things are things that are in the classroom already. And most of them are things that students would be exposed to. But if I didn't have the materials, I'd probably just gather up whatever I did have in the room or go ask other teachers for help. If I noticed that you all didn't understand the same concept, I'd probably interrupt you and go over it quickly with the whole group, and then put you back to the independent work and see if you changed anything. And if you didn't, then I would make a note that I need to do another lesson on that later in the unit, probably as soon as possible.